The gym smelled like sweat, old leather, and determination. I'd been coming here for 6 years, ever since the funeral, when the world felt too loud and my fists were the only things that made sense. Most nights, I had the place to myself after my shift at Marco's diner ended at 11. The owner, Jimmy Chin, an ex-boxer who'd seen better days and worse opponents, let me train for free as long as I locked up when I finished. Tonight was different. I was 3 rounds into working the heavy bag, my knuckles wrapped tight, my body moving through combinations my father had drilled into me when I was 12 years old. Jab, cross, hook, slip. The rhythm was meditative, the only time my mind went quiet enough to forget about rent that was 2 weeks overdue and the electric bill I'd been dodging. I didn't hear him coming over the sound of my own breathing and the chain rattling as the bag swung. Didn't notice I had an audience until I stopped to wipe sweat from my eyes and saw him standing 20 feet away, leaning against the ring post like he owned the place. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead and eyes so dark they looked black in the gym's fluorescent lighting. He wore an expensive suit, the kind that cost more than I made in 3 months, but he'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves like he was comfortable in spaces that weren't designed for men who wore $1,000 watches. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. You box like my father, he said. His voice was low, controlled, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe, or something close to it. My heart was still pounding from the workout, but something about the way he looked at me made it beat faster for different reasons. I unwrapped my hands slowly, giving myself time to think. He taught me before he died, I said. The man's expression shifted slightly, something that might have been respect or recognition crossing his features. He pushed off from the ring post and walked closer, his movements economical and precise. Not the swagger of someone trying to intimidate, but the confidence of someone who'd never needed to prove anything to anyone. Your father must have been a good teacher. Your footwork is textbook. Your combinations are clean. He stopped a few feet away, studying me with intensity that should have felt invasive but somehow didn't. But you're pulling your punches. I'm hitting a bag, not a person. Still, you're holding back. He gestured toward the heavy bag. Show me what you can really do. I should have told him to leave. Should have asked who he was and what he wanted in a closed gym at midnight. Instead, I rewrapped my hands and turned back to the bag. This time, I didn't hold back. My father, Tommy Chin, no relation to Jimmy, though people always assumed, had been a boxer in his 20s. Never made it to the professional circuit, but he'd been good enough to train others, good enough to pass on everything he knew to his daughter when she showed more interest in throwing punches than playing with dolls. He died of a heart attack when I was 16, dropped dead in the same gym while working the speed bag. I'd been the one to find him, had performed CPR until the paramedics arrived, but it was already too late. The doctor said he'd been gone before he hit the floor. The memory fueled my fists now. I drove combinations into the bag that made the chain scream in protest. Each punch carried 6 years of grief and anger and the desperate need to feel connected to someone who was gone. When I finally stopped, breathing hard, the man was nodding slowly. Better. Much better. He moved closer, examining my stance. But you're still telegraphing your right hook. You drop your shoulder half a second before you throw it. Against a real opponent, that's enough time for them to counter. And you're an expert on real opponents? You could say that. His smile was slight, dangerous. I'm Vincent Calabrese. The name hit me like a physical blow. Everyone in this city knew who Vincent Calabrese was, even people like me who try to stay as far from organized crime as possible. He controlled half the businesses in Little Italy and probably twice that many illegal operations that nobody talked about openly. He was also, according to the newspapers my customers left behind at the diner, one of the most dangerous men in New York. I took a step back instinctively. I don't want any trouble. I'm not offering trouble. I'm offering an observation. Vincent's gaze didn't waver. You have real talent, natural ability, combined with excellent training. It's rare to see someone your size move with that kind of power and precision. My size. The words came out sharper than I intended. I meant no offense. I'm simply stating a fact. You're what? 5'5", maybe 120 pounds? Against most opponents, you'd be significantly outmatched in reach and weight. But you compensate with speed and technique. He paused. Your father taught you well. Something about the way he said it, without condescension or false sympathy, made my throat tight. Why are you here? I own this building. Jimmy Chin pays me rent every month. Vincent said it matter-of-factly, like owning half the neighborhood was just another detail. I like to check on my properties occasionally, make sure everything's running smoothly. At midnight, I keep unusual hours. His expression suggested this was all the explanation I was getting. What's your name? Maya. Maya Chun. Tommy Chen's daughter. It wasn't a question. I heard about his death. He was well respected in this community. People still talk about his left hook. The fact that Vincent Calabrese knew who my father was shouldn't have surprised me. In a neighborhood like this, everyone's history was interconnected, woven together through family ties and old grudges and favors that got passed down through generations. He was a good man, I said quietly. I'm sure he was. Vincent pulled out his phone, checked something, then looked back at me. Maya Chun, do you currently have any professional boxing aspirations? The question caught me off guard. No. I work at Marco's Diner. This is just something I do to clear my head. Marco's? On Mulberry Street. That's the one. I know it. Good meatballs. Vincent's attention returned to me with laser focus. How would you feel about using your skills in a different capacity? Every instinct I had screamed at me to say no, to walk away from whatever Vincent Calabrese was about to offer. Nothing good came from getting involved with men like him. I'd seen enough customers at the diner, men who worked for various families, to know that the money might be better but the cost was always higher than it appeared. But I also knew that my landlord was going to evict me if I didn't come up with rent by Friday. Knew that the electric company had already sent their final notice. Knew that my manager at the diner had cut my hours because business was slow and he couldn't afford to keep everyone on full time. What kind of capacity? I asked carefully. I have business interests that occasionally require security personnel. People who can handle themselves in difficult situations. Vincent's tone remained neutral, professional. You have skills that would be valuable in that context. I'd compensate you appropriately for your time. You're asking me to be a bodyguard? Among other things. Think of it as private security work with flexible hours. He named a figure that made my breath catch. Weekly pay that was more than I made in a month at the diner. That's too much money for just security work. It's appropriate compensation for someone with your level of training and discretion. Vincent pulled a business card from his jacket pocket and handed it to me. Heavy cream stock, embossed with just a name and phone number. Think about it. Call me if you're interested. He started to walk away, then paused and turned back. Maya, one more thing. Whatever you decide about my offer, you should know that your landlord, Richard Morrison, is planning to sell your building to developers next month. They're going to gut it and convert it to luxury condos. Everyone currently living there will be evicted regardless of whether they're current on rent. The information hit me like a punch I hadn't seen coming. How do you know that? I make it my business to know things that affect people in my neighborhood. His expression softened slightly. If you decide to work for me, housing would be part of your compensation package. Something secure, where you wouldn't have to worry about surprise evictions. With that, Vincent Calabrese walked out of the gym, leaving me standing in the middle of the empty space with his business card in my hand and a choice that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. I should have thrown the card away, should have finished my workout, locked up the gym, and gone home to my apartment that apparently had an expiration date I hadn't known about. Instead, I looked down at the embossed lettering and wondered what my father would have said about Vincent Calabrese's offer. Whether he would have understood that sometimes survival meant making choices that weren't exactly right but weren't entirely wrong either. The heavy bag swayed slightly in the air current from the door closing. I hit it one more time, a straight right that connected clean and true, then wrapped my hands in my jacket and headed home. I didn't call Vincent Calabrese that night, or the next day, but I kept his card in my wallet, pressing against my few remaining dollars like a promise I hadn't decided whether to keep. 3 days later, my manager at Marco's Diner called me into his office and told me they were cutting my position entirely. Business had gotten worse, he explained with genuine regret in his voice. He couldn't justify keeping me on when they could barely afford to pay the kitchen staff. I cleaned out my locker in the back room, accepted my final paycheck that wouldn't even cover half of next month's rent, and walked out into the afternoon sunshine feeling untethered from everything I'd built in the 6 years since my father died. The diner was on Mulberry Street, just 3 blocks from Vincent Calabrese's office building. I knew where it was because everyone in the neighborhood knew where it was, the same way they knew where the church was or the police station. Landmarks of power that shaped the geography of our lives. My feet carried me there without conscious decision. Through the glass doors, up to a reception desk where a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and steel gray hair asked if she could help me. "I need to see Vincent Calabrese," I said. He told me to call, but I was in the neighborhood and thought, "Your name?" "Maya Chun." Recognition flickered across her features. She picked up a phone, spoke quietly into it, then nodded at me. "Mr. Calabrese will see you. 15th floor, office at the end of the hall." The elevator was sleek and modern, all mirrors and polished steel. I caught my reflection and almost didn't recognize myself. I'd changed out of my diner uniform before coming here, but I was still wearing jeans and a plain black t-shirt, my dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. I looked exactly like what I was, someone who didn't belong in buildings this expensive. The elevator doors opened onto a hallway that was all muted grays and soft lighting. Abstract art hung on the walls, the kind that probably cost more than my father had made in his entire boxing career. At the end of the hall, a door stood slightly ajar. I knocked anyway. "Come in." Vincent's voice carried clearly through the gap. His office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Vincent sat behind a massive desk made of dark wood, reviewing documents with the same focused intensity he'd brought to watching me box. He looked up as I entered, and something shifted in his expression. "Maya Chun, I wasn't expecting you quite so soon." He set down his pen and gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Please sit." I sat, though every muscle in my body wanted to pace. "I lost my job today. At the diner." "I'm sorry to hear that. Marco's loss is potentially my gain, assuming you're here for the reason I think you are." "I need the work," I said bluntly, "but I need to understand exactly what you're asking me to do. I'm not interested in illegal activity, and I won't hurt innocent people." Vincent leaned back in his chair, studying me with those dark eyes that seemed to see more than I wanted to reveal. "I appreciate your directness. Let me be equally direct. Yes, some of my business operations exist in legal gray areas, but the security work I'm offering you would be entirely legitimate. Protection for business meetings, presence at events that might attract unwanted attention, occasionally accompanying me or my associates when we travel." "Why me? You could hire professional bodyguards who have actual experience." "I could," he agreed, "and I have several on my payroll. But they all carry themselves like bodyguards, which draws attention. You, on the other hand, could move through spaces without anyone suspecting you're there for security purposes. That element of surprise could be invaluable. You want me because people would underestimate me. I want you because you have skills most people don't possess, combined with the ability to appear non-threatening until the moment action is required." Vincent pulled a folder from his desk drawer and slid it across to me. "This is a contract. Standard employee agreement with benefits, housing stipend, health insurance. Read through it carefully. If you have questions or concerns, I'll answer them honestly." I opened the folder and started reading. The language was surprisingly straightforward for a legal document. Clear terms of employment, specific job duties, compensation that made my hand shake slightly as I processed the numbers. There was also a confidentiality clause that would legally prevent me from discussing anything I witnessed or learned while working for Vincent, and a termination clause that allowed either of us to end the arrangement with 2 weeks' notice. "This seems reasonable," I said cautiously. "Did you expect something more sinister?" "I expected more ambiguity, more ways for you to control me." Vincent's expression hardened slightly. "Maya, let me be very clear about something. I don't control people through contracts or manipulation. I offer fair terms and expect loyalty in return. If you work for me, it will be because you choose to, not because I've trapped you into it. And if I choose to leave, then you leave, with severance pay and a good reference, assuming your departure isn't the result of betrayal or theft. His tone suggested that betrayal would carry consequences, but they weren't spelled out in the contract. I read through the document twice more, looking for catches or hidden clauses. Finding none, everything Vincent Calabrese was offering seemed legitimate, almost generous, which made me more nervous than if he'd been obviously manipulative. "There's something you're not telling me," I said finally. "Some reason you're making this offer beyond just needing security personnel." Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the windows, looking out at the city spread below us. "My father was a boxer," he said quietly. "Not professionally, just in the neighborhood gyms when he was young. He taught me to fight before he taught me anything about the family business. Said that understanding violence, real violence, was essential to knowing when to use it and when to walk away." He turned back to face me, and I saw something vulnerable flash across his features before he controlled it. "He died when I was 15. Heart attack, just like your father. Dropped dead in the middle of a conversation about my future, about the choices I'd have to make." Vincent's jaw tightened. I never got to show him what I'd learned, never got to prove that his lessons meant something. Understanding crashed over me like cold water. "You see your father when you watch me box. I see someone who honors their father's memory through action rather than words, who took pain and grief and turned it into strength." He returned to his desk but didn't sit. "That's the kind of person I want working for me, Maya. Someone who understands that power isn't about intimidation. It's about control." The honesty in his voice made something crack in my chest. Here was Vincent Calabrese, one of the most feared men in New York, revealing something personal and painful because he needed me to understand his motivation. I looked down at the contract again, at the numbers that would solve my immediate problems, and the terms that seemed designed to give me a way out if I needed it. "I'll do it," I said. "But I have conditions." "Name them." "I won't do anything illegal. I won't hurt anyone who doesn't deserve it. And if I ever feel like this arrangement is compromising who I am, I walk away. No arguments, no attempts to change my mind." Vincent extended his hand across the desk. "Agreed?" I shook his hand, felt the calluses on his palm that suggested he still trained regularly, and wondered what I just committed myself to. "When do I start?" "Tomorrow night. There's a charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum. I need someone to accompany me who can watch the crowd while I handle business conversations." His expression turned slightly amused. "You'll need appropriate clothing. I'll have my assistant arrange something." "I can buy my own clothes." "With what money? You just lost your job." He said it without cruelty, just stating facts. "Consider it a work uniform. Part of the job requirements." Pride made me want to argue, but practicality won out. "Fine, but nothing too expensive. I'm not comfortable wearing things that cost more than my monthly rent used to." "Noted." Vincent sat back down and pulled out his phone. "I'm sending you the address for the apartment I mentioned. It's in a building I own on Elizabeth Street. 2-bedroom, fully furnished, available immediately. Move in whenever you're ready." My phone buzzed with the incoming message. I looked at the address and felt my breath catch. Elizabeth Street was one of the nicest areas in Little Italy, where young professionals and artists were gentrifying old brownstones into modern luxury. "This is too much." "It's practical. You'll be working unusual hours, sometimes late at night. I need you close enough that you can respond quickly if necessary." Vincent's tone brooked no argument. "Consider it part of your compensation package, not charity." I wanted to keep protesting, wanted to maintain some independence in this arrangement that was already shifting the foundation of my life. But I also knew that my current apartment had an expiration date, and Vincent's offer solved that problem definitively. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll move in this week." "Good." Vincent made a note on his desk calendar. "Tomorrow night. The gala starts at 7. I'll send a car for you at 6:30. Wear whatever my assistant provides, and try to look like you belong at expensive social events." "I've never been to a gala." "Then tomorrow will be educational." His slight smile suggested he found my inexperience amusing. "Don't worry. Most of the people there are performative about their wealth and sophistication. Just watch how they move and mirror it." I stood to leave, contract folder in hand, feeling like I just stepped through a doorway I couldn't see beyond. "Maya," Vincent said as I reached the door, "thank you for trusting me with this. I know it's not an easy choice. I don't trust you yet, I said honestly. But I trust that you need me for something real. That's enough to start with. His laugh was low and genuine. Fair enough. I'll earn your trust over time. I left his office and rode the elevator back down to street level, where the late afternoon sun was painting everything gold. The business card in my wallet had transformed into a signed contract that would change everything about my life. My phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. Miss Chen, this is Patricia, Mr. Calabrese's assistant. I'll be at your current address tomorrow at 2 p.m. with appropriate attire for the gala. Please provide your sizes at your earliest convenience. I sent back my measurements, then started walking toward my soon-to-be former apartment. I needed to pack, needed to process what had just happened, needed to call the few friends I had and explain that my life was taking a sharp left turn into territory I didn't fully understand. But first, I detoured to Jimmy Chen's gym. It was still closed, wouldn't open for another 3 hours, but I had a key. I let myself in and stood in the center of the space where my father had taught me everything he knew about fighting and discipline and the difference between strength and violence. I hope you'd understand this, I said to the empty air. I hope you'd see that I'm trying to survive the same way you taught me to, by using what I'm good at and not apologizing for it. The gym, of course, didn't answer. But as I left and locked the door behind me, I could almost hear my father's voice in my memory. Maya girl, the ring doesn't care about your excuses. It only cares about what you do when the bell rings. So when opportunity comes, you better be ready to swing. I wasn't sure if working for Vincent Calabrese counted as opportunity or danger. But either way, the bell had rung, and I was committed to seeing where this fight would take me. The apartment on Elizabeth Street was nothing like the cramped studio I'd been living in for the past 4 years. 2 bedrooms with actual doors that closed, hardwood floors that gleamed under soft lighting, windows that overlooked a tree-lined street where people walked dogs that probably cost more than my old monthly rent. I'd moved in 3 days ago with everything I owned fitting into 4 boxes and 2 duffel bags. The furniture Vincent provided was tasteful and minimal, a comfortable couch in charcoal gray, a dining table that could seat 6, a bed with sheets that felt like sleeping on clouds. The kitchen had appliances I didn't know how to use and cabinet space I'd probably never fill. It felt like living in someone else's life. Patricia had arrived exactly at 2 p.m. on my first day, carrying 3 garment bags and a professional makeup kit that looked like it belonged backstage at a fashion show. She was in her late 50s, with perfectly styled silver hair and the kind of efficiency that suggested she'd been managing Vincent Calabrese's life for years. Mr. Calabrese mentioned you'd need options, she'd said, hanging the garment bags in my empty closet. I brought 3 different styles: conservative, bold, and somewhere in between. Try them all and see what feels right. The conservative option was a navy dress with long sleeves and a hemline that hit just below my knees. The bold choice was red silk that clung in ways that made me uncomfortable just looking at it. The middle ground was black, sleeveless, with a neckline that was low but not scandalous and a skirt that moved when I walked. I'd chosen the black dress, and Patricia had nodded approvingly. Good instinct. It's elegant without being memorable, which is exactly what you want for your first event. She'd opened her makeup kit. Now, let's make sure you can blend in with people who pay $500 for haircuts. The transformation had been unsettling. Patricia worked quickly, applying makeup that enhanced my features without making me look painted. She'd styled my hair into a low bun that was sophisticated but not fussy, and when she'd finished, I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. You clean up well, Patricia had said with a slight smile. Mr. Calabrese will be pleased. Now, standing in my new apartment as 6:30 approached, I studied my reflection one more time. The dress fit perfectly, the makeup was still flawless, and the heels Patricia had provided added 3 inches to my height without being impossible to move in. I looked like someone who belonged at a charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum, which meant I looked nothing like myself. My phone buzzed. A text from Vincent. Car is downstairs. Take your time coming down. No rush. I grabbed the small clutch purse Patricia had included, just big enough for my phone, ID, and the lipstick she'd insisted I carry for touch-ups, and headed for the elevator. The car was a black sedan with tinted windows, driven by a man in his 40s who introduced himself as Marco. He opened the door for me without comment on my appearance, which I appreciated more than he could know. Vincent was already in the back seat, wearing a tuxedo that had definitely been custom-made. He looked up from his phone as I slid in beside him, and something shifted in his expression. "You look different," he said. "Patricia is very good at her job." "She is." Vincent's gaze traveled over me with professional assessment, not attraction. "But I wasn't referring to the dress or makeup. You carry yourself differently, more confident." "I spent the last 3 days practicing walking in heels and not tripping over my own feet," I admitted. "The confidence is mostly pretend. That's how it starts for everyone. Eventually, the pretend becomes real." He returned his attention to his phone. "Tonight's event is a fundraiser for the museum's new contemporary art wing. About 300 guests, mostly wealthy donors and art collectors. My role is to make an appearance, write a check, and have conversations with people who might be useful to my business interests. And my role? Watch the crowd. Look for anyone paying too much attention to me or trying to position themselves for private conversation. Most importantly, notice if anyone seems out of place or threatening." Vincent glanced at me. "Can you do that while appearing to simply be my companion for the evening? If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one." "I can try. That's all I ask." He put away his phone as the car pulled up to the museum's entrance. "One more thing. People will assume you're my girlfriend or date. Don't correct them unless someone asks directly. It's easier to let them make assumptions than to explain the actual nature of our relationship." The implication made my stomach tighten. "You want me to pretend we're together? I want you to not volunteer information about why you're here. There's a difference." Vincent's tone was patient. "If someone asks if you're my girlfriend, feel free to say no. But if they simply treat you like you are, just go with it. It maintains the cover story." Before I could respond, Marco was opening the door and Vincent was stepping out onto a red carpet lined with photographers. I followed, acutely aware of camera flashes and the murmur of voices as people noticed Vincent Calabrese's arrival. He offered me his arm with practiced ease, and I took it, letting him guide me through the entrance and into a world I'd only seen in movies. The Metropolitan Museum at night was transformed into something magical. The great hall glowed with warm light from massive chandeliers. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that were more art than food. Women in designer gowns mingled with men in expensive tuxedos, their laughter echoing off marble floors and high ceilings. Vincent moved through the crowd with the ease of someone who belonged here, stopping occasionally to greet people who clearly knew him. He introduced me as Maya, nothing more, and I noticed how quickly people's eyes slid over me, dismissing me as arm candy while they focused on Vincent. "You see that man in the gray suit?" Vincent murmured, his lips close to my ear so only I could hear. 3 o'clock, near the Greco-Roman wing entrance. He's been watching me since we arrived. I followed his direction casually, scanning the crowd until I spotted the man he meant. Mid-40s, average height, with the kind of forgettable face that was probably an asset in his line of work. He held a champagne glass, but wasn't drinking from it, and his eyes tracked Vincent with intense focus. "I see him. That's Detective Marcus Shaw, NYPD Organized Crime Division. He's been investigating my businesses for 2 years and hasn't found anything that would stick in court." Vincent's tone held amusement. He comes to these events hoping I'll slip up and say something incriminating in public. "Does he know who I am?" "Not yet, but he'll run your background by tomorrow morning. Don't worry about it. You have nothing in your history that would interest him." We continued moving through the crowd. Vincent stopped to write a check for an amount that made my breath catch. $50,000, casually donated like it was nothing. He spoke with an art dealer about a Picasso that was coming up for auction, discussed shipping logistics with a man who owned half the commercial real estate in Manhattan, and smoothly deflected questions from a society reporter about his personal life. Through it all, I watched, studied the way people moved and interacted, how they positioned themselves to be noticed or to blend in. Noticed the security guard stationed at every entrance, the way certain guests received extra attention from museum staff, the subtle hierarchies that played out in who spoke to whom and when. I also noticed the woman in the emerald green dress who'd been circling closer to Vincent for the past 20 minutes. She was beautiful in a way that was clearly expensive. Perfect hair, flawless skin, jewelry that caught the light with every movement. But there was something calculating in how she moved, positioning herself in Vincent's line of sight without appearing obvious about it. "Vincent," I said quietly. "Green dress. Your left, moving toward us." He glanced over, and his expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "That's Sofia Castellano, daughter of Marco Castellano, who runs operations in Brooklyn. She's been trying to arrange a marriage alliance between our families for 6 months." A marriage alliance? People still do that? In my world, they do. Vincent's hand settled on my lower back, a gesture that looked casual but felt protective. "Follow my lead." Sofia Castellano arrived with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Vincent, what a surprise seeing you here. I didn't know you were interested in contemporary art." "I'm interested in supporting the city's cultural institutions," Vincent replied smoothly. "Sofia, this is Maya Chin." "Maya, Sofia Castellano." Sofia's gaze swept over me with the precision of a jeweler assessing a stone and finding it flawed. "Chun, I don't believe I know that family." "You wouldn't," I said before Vincent could answer. "We're not in the same business circles. How did you two meet?" The question was directed at Vincent, like I wasn't standing right there. "Through mutual interests," Vincent said vaguely. "Maya has unique talents that I find valuable." The phrasing was deliberately ambiguous, could mean anything from professional skills to personal compatibility. Sofia's expression soured slightly as she processed the implication that Vincent had brought a date to a public event, effectively signaling that he wasn't available for her family's marriage plans. "I see. Well, I'm sure you have other people to greet. Perhaps we can speak privately later, Vincent. My father wanted me to discuss some business opportunities with you." "If your father wants to discuss business, he can call my office and schedule a meeting." Vincent's tone was polite but dismissive. "I don't conduct business negotiations at charity events." Sofia's smile became brittle. "Of course. Enjoy your evening." She walked away with her head high, but I could see tension in her shoulders that suggested the conversation hadn't gone the way she'd planned. "You just made an enemy," I observed. "I made a statement. There's a difference." Vincent guided me toward a quieter corner of the hall. "Sofia's been persistent about the marriage alliance because her father sees it as a way to expand his territory into Manhattan. But I'm not interested in mixing business with family obligations." "Is that what marriage would be for you? A family obligation?" "In my world, it usually is." He accepted 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter and handed me one. "Love is considered a luxury that can compromise good judgment. Better to marry someone who understands the business and can be a strategic partner." "That sounds lonely." Vincent looked at me then, really looked, and something vulnerable flickered across his features. "It is. But loneliness is safer than caring about someone who could be used against you." Before I could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. Raised voices, the sound of glass breaking, then a woman's scream that cut through the cultured murmur of conversation like a knife. Vincent's entire demeanor changed instantly. The polished businessman disappeared, replaced by someone harder, more dangerous. "Stay close to me." We moved toward the source of the disturbance. The crowd parted as people recognized Vincent, creating a path that let us see what was happening. A young woman, maybe 25, was being restrained by 2 security guards. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, her carefully styled hair had come loose, and there was blood on her hands. 10 feet away, a man in an expensive suit was clutching his arm, blood seeping through his fingers. "She stabbed me," the man shouted. "That crazy bitch actually stabbed me." "Because you tried to drag me into the bathroom," the woman screamed back. "Because you thought you could do whatever you wanted because your family has money." Museum security was trying to control the situation, but it was clear they were overwhelmed. The man who'd been stabbed was demanding someone call the police. The woman was crying and shouting accusations. Other guests were pulling out phones, recording everything, probably already posting to social media. Vincent stepped forward with calm authority. "Everyone stop!" The force of his voice cut through the chaos. Security guards froze. The injured man went quiet. Even the woman stopped struggling, her eyes going wide as she recognized who was speaking. "You." Vincent pointed at the injured man. Sit down before you pass out from blood loss. The wound isn't deep enough to kill you, but you're pale enough to faint. Then he turned to the woman. What's your name? Lisa. Lisa Romano. Her voice shook. I work in the museum's restoration department. I was invited to the gala because I helped restore one of the paintings being featured tonight. And what happened? Lisa's gaze darted to the injured man, then back to Vincent. He cornered me near the bathrooms, started saying things about how I looked in my dress, how women like me should be grateful for attention from men like him. When I tried to leave, he grabbed my arm and tried to pull me toward the bathroom. I had a letter opener in my purse. I'd been using it earlier to open an invitation, and I just reacted. She's lying, the injured man sputtered. I barely touched her. She came on to me, and when I rejected her, she lost it. Vincent studied both of them for a long moment. Then he gestured to one of the security guards. Check the security cameras for this area. I want footage from the last 30 minutes. Sir, we can't just. I'm a major donor to this museum, and I'm requesting security footage to verify what happened. Unless you prefer I call my lawyers and have them requested officially, which will take longer and create more problems for everyone involved. The security guard looked at his supervisor, who nodded reluctantly. They disappeared toward the security office, while Vincent turned his attention back to Lisa and the injured man. What's your name? He asked the man. Richard Ashford III. My family has been donating to this museum for 3 generations. You can't just. I can do whatever I want, Mr. Ashford, including making a phone call that ensures your family's donations become significantly less welcome if the situation isn't handled properly. Vincent's tone was conversational, but there was steel underneath. So I suggest you sit quietly and wait for security to return with the footage. We stood in tense silence for 5 minutes that felt like an hour. I stayed close to Vincent, watching the crowd that had gathered. Most people were recording on their phones, whispering to each other, clearly thrilled to have drama at what had probably been a boring event until now. I also noticed Detective Shaw had moved closer, watching everything with intense interest. When security returned, the supervisor's expression told the story before he spoke. The footage shows Mr. Ashford grabbing Ms. Romano's arm and attempting to pull her toward the bathroom. She pulled away multiple times before using the letter opener in self-defense. Richard Ashford's face went from pale to red in seconds. That's not. You're misinterpreting what you saw. The footage is very clear, the supervisor said firmly. Ms. Romano, would you like to press charges? Lisa looked overwhelmed, her eyes filling with tears. I just want to go home. I don't want to deal with police and lawyers and all of that. I just want this night to be over. Understandable, Vincent said. But you should know that if you don't press charges, Mr. Ashford will face no consequences for assaulting you. My lawyers will destroy her if she tries, Richard sneered. My family will make sure she never works in the city again. Something in Vincent's expression shifted into something colder than ice. He stepped closer to Richard Ashford, lowering his voice so only those nearby could hear. Let me be very clear about something, Mr. Ashford. If you or your family make any attempt to retaliate against Ms. Romano in any way, legal, professional, or personal, I will take it as a personal insult. And when I take things personally, people tend to have very unfortunate accidents with their business interests. Are you threatening me? I'm making you aware of consequences. There's a difference. Vincent turned to Lisa. Ms. Romano, I'm going to give you my attorney's contact information. If you decide to press charges, her services are available to you at no cost. If you choose not to press charges, that's your right. But either way, if anyone from the Ashford family contacts you, you call this number immediately. He pulled out his phone, typed something, and Lisa's phone buzzed with an incoming message. Thank you, she whispered. I don't understand why you're helping me, but thank you. Because what happened to you is wrong, and people with power should use it to protect those who can't protect themselves. Vincent's voice was gentle in a way that made something in my chest tighten. Go home, Ms. Romano. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be easier. Museum security escorted Lisa out while paramedics arrived to treat Richard Ashford's superficial wound. The crowd began dispersing. Their evening's entertainment concluded, already crafting the stories they'd tell about witnessing Vincent Calabrese intervene in an assault at the Met. Detective Shaw approached us as the crowd thinned. That was quite a performance, Mr. Calabrese. Detective Shaw, enjoying the gala? Vincent's tone was coolly polite. I'm working, actually. Museum security invited us to provide additional presence given the number of high-profile guests. Shaw's eyes moved to me. I don't believe we've met. I'm Detective Marcus Shaw, NYPD. Maya Chun. I shook his hand, noting his firm grip and the way he studied me like I was a puzzle he intended to solve. Chun, you're Tommy Chun's daughter, aren't you? The boxer who died 6 years ago. The fact that he knew that sent a chill down my spine. You knew my father? I knew of him. He was well respected in the community. Good man by all accounts. Shaw's attention returned to Vincent. Interesting that you two ended up together. Almost like fate brought you into Mr. Calabrese's orbit. Almost like I hired her for her skills, and we're building a professional relationship, Vincent corrected smoothly. Was there something you needed, Detective? Or did you just want to make uncomfortable insinuations at a charity event? Just observing. It's what I do. Shaw pulled out a business card and handed it to me. Miss Chun, if you ever need someone to talk to about your current employment situation, please feel free to call me. Day or night. He walked away before I could respond, leaving me holding his card and feeling like I'd just been warned about something I didn't fully understand. He's going to be a problem, I said quietly. Shaw has been a problem for 2 years. He's convinced I'm running some kind of criminal empire, and he's determined to prove it. Vincent guided me toward the exit. Don't let him get in your head. He tries to recruit anyone who works for me, hoping someone will turn informant. It never works. We left the museum and found Marco waiting with the car. I slid into the back seat, suddenly exhausted from maintaining perfect posture and fake confidence for 3 hours. Vincent settled beside me, loosening his tie with visible relief. You did well tonight. I stood next to you and watched people. It wasn't exactly difficult. You spotted Sofia Castellano's approach before I did. You noticed the disturbance before museum security reacted. And you didn't flinch when Detective Shaw tried to intimidate you. Vincent's expression held approval. Those aren't small things, Maya. Situational awareness and maintaining composure under pressure are skills that most people never develop. My father taught me to always know where the exits are and who's moving toward you. Said it was essential for survival in the ring and in life. Smart man. Vincent pulled out his phone and typed something. I'm having Patricia arrange self-defense training for you. Beyond your boxing skills, you should know how to handle situations where someone gets too close or tries to grab you. Like what happened to Lisa Romano tonight. Exactly like that. His jaw tightened. Men like Richard Ashford exist in every social circle. They think wealth and family name give them the right to do whatever they want to whoever they want. Usually they're correct because their victims are too afraid to fight back. But you fought back for her. Why? Vincent was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the city passing by. Because I can. Because I have power and resources that most people don't. And using them to protect someone who can't protect themselves is the only thing that makes any of this worthwhile. The sincerity in his voice made something shift in how I viewed him. Vincent Calabrese wasn't just a crime boss playing dress-up at charity events. He was someone who understood that power meant responsibility, even when that responsibility wasn't profitable or strategic. You surprised me tonight, I admitted. How so? I expected you to be cold, calculating. Someone who only helped people if there was something in it for you. I turned to face him. But you helped Lisa Romano knowing it would make enemies of the Ashford family. That's not cold or calculating. That's decent. Vincent's smile was slight and sad. Don't mistake one act of decency for a complete character assessment, Maya. I've done things that would make you walk away if you knew the full truth. But yes, when I can afford to be decent, I try to be. The car pulled up outside my apartment building. Marco opened the door, and I stepped out onto the sidewalk, my feet aching in the heels I'd been wearing for hours. Same time next week, Vincent said through the open door. There's a gallery opening in Chelsea that I need to attend. Similar arrangement to tonight. I'll be ready. I watched the car pull away, then headed inside to my too large apartment with its too comfortable furniture. I stripped off the dress and makeup, stood under a hot shower until my muscles unclenched, and tried to process everything that had happened. My phone buzzed as I was pulling on sweatpants and an old t-shirt. A text from an unknown number. "This is Lisa Romano. I got your number from Mr. Calabrese's assistant. I just wanted to say thank you again for what you both did tonight. I've been working at the museum for 3 years, and nobody has ever stood up for me like that." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. "You defended yourself. We just made sure you didn't face consequences for it. Stay safe." Her response came quickly. "Will you really call Mr. Calabrese's lawyer if I decide to press charges?" "Yes. And she'll make sure you're protected throughout the entire process." "Okay. I think I'm going to do it. What Richard Ashford did was wrong, and maybe if he faces consequences, he'll think twice before doing it to someone else." Pride swelled in my chest for this woman I barely knew. "That's brave. Really brave. Let me know if you need anything." "I will. Thank you, Maya." I set down my phone and walked to the window, looking out at Elizabeth Street with its tree-lined sidewalks and expensive brownstones. This was my life now. Fancy apartments and charity galas, and standing beside Vincent Calabrese while he redistributed power in ways both subtle and direct. My father had taught me to fight with my fists in my brain, had drilled into me that real strength meant protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Tonight, I'd watched Vincent Calabrese do exactly that, and it had shifted something fundamental in how I understood the choice I'd made. The next morning, I was at Jimmy Chen's gym by 6 a.m., working through combinations on the heavy bag. My body ached from wearing heels and maintaining perfect posture, but the familiar rhythm of training helped ground me back in who I was beneath the dress and makeup. I was 3 rounds in when Vincent appeared in the doorway. He wore workout clothes, plain black athletic pants, and a gray t-shirt that revealed the kind of build you only got from serious, consistent training. His hands were already wrapped, and he carried himself like someone who knew his way around a boxing ring. "Morning," he said, setting down a gym bag. "Jimmy told me you train here most mornings. I hope you don't mind company. It's your building. You can train here whenever you want." "That's not what I asked." Vincent approached the heavy bag, studying my stance. "I asked if you mind company." I considered the question honestly. Having Vincent here felt like an invasion of the space I'd claimed as my own, the place where I connected with my father's memory and didn't have to perform for anyone. But it also felt like an opportunity to understand him better, to see who he was when the expensive suits and careful control fell away. "I don't mind," I said finally. "But if you're going to watch me train, you should probably know that I look terrible when I sweat, and I curse a lot when combinations don't land clean." "Fair warning." Vincent's smile was genuine. "I look equally terrible when sweating, and my cursing is in Italian, which somehow sounds more dramatic." He moved to a different heavy bag and started his own workout. I tried to focus on my training, but I couldn't help watching him in the gym's mirrors. His technique was excellent. Not professional level like mine, but solid fundamentals combined with power that came from years of conditioning. After 20 minutes, I stopped to catch my breath and hydrate. Vincent finished his round and joined me, breathing hard but controlled. "Your father taught you well," he said, wiping sweat from his face. "Every combination you throw has a signature on it. The way you slip left before countering with a right hook, that was Tommy Chen's trademark move." "You saw my father fight?" "Once, when I was 16. He did an exhibition match against one of my father's men. It was supposed to be friendly sparring, but your father made it look like art." Vincent's expression turned distant with memory. "My father watched that match and told me that real power isn't about being the strongest or most aggressive. It's about control and precision, knowing exactly how much force to use and when to use it." "Your father sounds wise." "He was, until his heart gave out and left me trying to run an empire I wasn't ready for." Vincent's jaw tightened. "I was 15 when he died. Had to grow up faster than I should have make. Decisions that no teenager should have to make." "I was 16 when my father died," I said quietly. "I know what it's like to have your childhood end in a single moment." We sat in silence for a while, 2 people connected by grief and lost fathers and the strange paths that had brought us together. "Can I ask you something?" I said finally. "Of course. Last night, when you helped Lisa Romano, you said that people with power should use it to protect those who can't protect themselves. But you've also built your entire empire on activities that hurt people. How do you reconcile those 2 things?" Vincent was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. Then he stood and walked to the ring in the center of the gym, leaning against the ropes. "I don't," he said simply. "I accept that I'm a contradiction, that I've done terrible things to maintain power and control, but I try to use that power for good when I can." He looked at me directly. "Does that make me a good person doing bad things, or a bad person doing good things? I honestly don't know anymore. Maybe it just makes you human. Maybe." Vincent pushed off from the ropes. "Want to spar?" Light contact, just working on technique and timing. Every instinct told me this was a bad idea. Sparring with your employer, especially one as dangerous as Vincent Calabrese, felt like crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed. But I was curious to see how he moved, how he adapted to an opponent who wouldn't hold back just because he was the boss. "Okay, but I'm not pulling my punches beyond what's necessary for safety." "I wouldn't want you to." Vincent climbed into the ring and I followed. We touched gloves in the traditional sign of respect, then began circling each other. He moved well, keeping his guard up and his footwork tight. I threw a testing jab that he slipped easily, then followed with a combination that he blocked with good technique. We went back and forth for a few minutes, feeling each other out, neither of us fully committing to attacks. Then Vincent threw a right hook that I barely saw coming. I ducked under it and countered with a body shot that landed clean. He grunted with the impact but didn't slow down, coming back with a combination that forced me to give ground. The spar intensified. We were still pulling our punches enough to avoid injury, but the competitive energy was real. Vincent's reach advantage meant I had to work harder to get inside, but once I did, my speed and precision gave me opportunities he had to respect. I caught him with a clean left hook that snapped his head back, and for a moment I froze, worried I'd crossed a line. But Vincent just grinned and reset his stance. "Your father's left hook," he said. I should have seen it coming. We continued for 2 more rounds, both of us breathing hard and sweating through our shirts by the time we finally stopped. Vincent leaned against the ropes, looking at me with something that might have been respect or admiration or both. "You're better than I expected. You're not bad yourself. For a crime boss who probably has people to do his fighting for him." "I do have people to do my fighting, but I never ask anyone to do something I'm not capable of doing myself." Vincent climbed out of the ring and offered me his hand to help me down. "Same time tomorrow. You want to make this a regular thing? I want to maintain my skills, and you're the best training partner I've had in years. Plus, it helps me understand how you move and think, which makes you more effective as my security." His tone became more serious. "Is that okay with you? Or would you prefer to keep your training time private?" I thought about it honestly. Having Vincent here changed the dynamic of my morning routine, made it feel less like connecting with my father's memory and more like building something new. But maybe that wasn't a bad thing. Maybe holding on to the past so tightly was preventing me from moving forward. "Same time tomorrow," I agreed. "But you're buying breakfast afterward. I know a place that makes the best egg sandwiches in Little Italy." "Deal." Vincent grabbed his gym bag. "I'll see you tonight. Patricia will send over details about the gallery opening." He left, and I stayed in the gym for another hour, working through drills and trying to process the strange intimacy of sparring with someone who was technically my employer but felt increasingly like something more complicated. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Details about the gallery opening, another dress being delivered tomorrow, a reminder to eat something substantial before the event because the food at gallery openings was pretentious and insufficient. I smiled at her blunt assessment, then noticed another text below it. From Detective Shaw. "Miss Chun, I did some research on your background. You have a clean record, and by all accounts you're a good person. I'm concerned about your association with Mr. Calabrese, and would like to speak with you about your employment situation. Coffee sometime this week." I stared at the message, torn between curiosity about what Shaw thought he knew and loyalty to Vincent, who'd given me opportunities when I had none. I typed back a simple response. "Thank you for your concern, Detective, but I'm not interested in discussing my employment." His reply came quickly. "The offer stands if you change your mind. People like Calabrese have a way of pulling good people into bad situations. I'd hate to see that happen to you." I didn't respond. Just set down my phone and returned to the heavy bag, throwing combinations until my knuckles ached and my mind went quiet enough to stop second-guessing every choice I'd made since Vincent Calabrese walked into my life. 3 weeks into working for Vincent Calabrese, I developed a routine that felt almost normal. Morning training at the gym, sometimes alone, sometimes with Vincent pushing me through sparring sessions that left us both exhausted and grinning. Afternoons reviewing security protocols with Marco, who'd taken it upon himself to teach me everything he knew about threat assessment and protective details. Evenings accompanying Vincent to various events, gallery openings, business dinners, charity auctions where wealthy people spent obscene amounts of money to feel philanthropic. I'd also started to understand the architecture of Vincent's world, the legitimate businesses that provided cover for less legitimate operations, the network of loyalty and fear that kept his organization running smoothly, the delicate balance between being respected and being feared, and how Vincent navigated that line with precision my father would have recognized from boxing, knowing exactly how much force to apply and when to pull back. What I hadn't expected was how quickly I'd become comfortable in that world, how naturally I'd learned to read a room and identify potential threats, how easily I'd adapted to wearing expensive dresses and making small talk with people whose annual income could fund a small country. Patricia said I was a natural. Marco said I had good instincts. Vincent said I reminded him of his mother, who'd apparently been the real power behind his father's organization until cancer took her when Vincent was 12. I wasn't sure any of those comparisons were compliments, but I accepted them as acknowledgement that I was doing my job well. The gallery opening in Chelsea had been uneventful. A businessman from Chicago had tried to corner Vincent about expanding operations into the Midwest, and I'd intercepted with practiced ease, claiming Vincent had a prior commitment and steering him toward a conversation about the sculptures on display instead. Vincent had thanked me later with the kind of smile that made something warm settle in my chest. The charity auction the following week had been more complicated. A rival family had sent someone to bid on the same items Vincent wanted, driving up prices in a transparent attempt to waste his money. Vincent had handled it by donating double the final bid amounts directly to the charity, bypassing the auction entirely, and making the rival family look petty in comparison. Tonight was different. Tonight was personal. Vincent had invited me to his home in Greenwich Village for dinner. Not as security, not as part of my job, but as what he'd called a friend who deserves to see the real version of my life, not just the performance I give at public events. I'd spent an embarrassing amount of time deciding what to wear before settling on dark jeans and a soft blue sweater that Patricia had included in one of her deliveries. Casual but not sloppy. Comfortable but not careless. The address Vincent had given me led to a converted warehouse that looked unassuming from the outside but opened into a space that took my breath away. Exposed brick walls, high ceilings with original industrial beams, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a private courtyard. Art that was clearly chosen for personal preference rather than investment value. Furniture that looked comfortable and lived in rather than showroom perfect. This was Vincent's actual home, the place where the performance ended and the real person existed. He met me at the door wearing jeans and a black Henley, his feet bare on polished concrete floors. His hair was slightly damp like he'd recently showered, and without the armor of expensive suits and careful grooming, he looked younger, more vulnerable. "Maya, come in." He stepped aside to let me enter. "I hope you're hungry." I may have overestimated how much food 2 people can eat and ordered enough to feed a small army. The smell of Italian food filled the space, garlic and tomatoes and fresh bread. My stomach growled in response, reminding me I'd skipped lunch to fit in extra training. "I'm starving," I admitted. "What did you order?" "I didn't order. I cooked." Vincent said it casually, like this was normal information and not something that completely contradicted my mental image of him. My mother insisted all her children learn to cook properly, said relying on restaurants and staff made you dependent on others in ways that could become dangerous. Your mother sounds like she was an interesting woman. She was terrifying and brilliant in equal measure. Vincent led me to a kitchen area that was clearly well used, with copper pots hanging from overhead racks and a collection of knives that probably cost more than my old car. She ran most of my father's operations while he handled public relations and enforcement. Everyone knew she was the real power, but she preferred it that way. Less visible, more effective. He gestured to a pot on the stove. "I made puttanesca. It was her signature dish, the thing she cooked when she wanted to remind my father and his men that she could create something beautiful and deadly at the same time. I looked into the pot and saw pasta with tomatoes, olives, capers, and anchovies simmering in a sauce that smelled incredible. Deadly. The name literally means, in the style of prostitutes. Legend says they made it because the smell was strong enough to attract customers from the street. Vincent's smile was slight. My mother liked the imagery, something seemingly simple that was actually complex and bold and impossible to ignore. He plated the pasta with practiced ease, added fresh basil and grated Parmesan, then carried both plates to a dining table set for two. Wine glasses stood ready, and he poured us both a red that probably cost more than I wanted to think about. "This feels very domestic," I said, sitting across from him. Very different from the Vincent Calabrese who writes $50,000 checks at museum galas. That Vincent Calabrese is a performance, a role I play because it's expected and useful. He took a sip of wine. "This is just me, the person who exists between the obligations and appearances." The pasta was incredible, rich and savory with layers of flavor that spoke to years of practice. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Vincent spoke again. "I wanted to talk to you about something. Away from the office, away from public spaces where we have to maintain certain appearances." My stomach tightened with anxiety. "Okay, you've been working for me for 3 weeks. In that time, you've handled every situation I've put you in with competence and grace. You've proven yourself valuable beyond what I initially expected." Vincent set down his fork and looked at me directly. "But I need to know if you're actually comfortable with this arrangement or if you're just going through the motions because you need the money." The honesty in his question deserved an honest answer. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, sorting through complicated feelings I'd been avoiding examining too closely. "At first, I was doing it for the money," I admitted. "I needed to survive, and you offered me a way to do that. But somewhere in the past 3 weeks, it became about more than just financial security." "What did it become about?" "Purpose. Belonging. The feeling that what I'm doing matters in ways that serving coffee and eggs never did." I met his gaze. "When you helped Lisa Romano at the museum, when you use your power to protect people who can't protect themselves, I feel like I'm part of something important. Something my father would have understood and respected." Vincent's expression softened. "Your father was a good man who taught you well. He'd be proud of how you've handled yourself." "Would he?" "I'm working for a crime boss, Vincent. I'm helping you maintain power that's built on activities that aren't exactly legal or ethical." "True. But you're also helping me use that power responsibly. You're a conscience I didn't know I needed." Vincent refilled my wine glass. "You see the contradictions in what I do, and you don't let me pretend they don't exist. That's valuable in ways I'm not sure you understand." We finished dinner while talking about safer topics. My father's boxing career, Vincent's childhood with siblings who'd scattered to different parts of the country, the strange intimacy of learning someone's life story in fragments and pieces. When the plates were empty, Vincent led me to a comfortable seating area near the windows overlooking the courtyard. "There's something else I need to tell you," he said, settling into an armchair while I took the couch. "About Detective Shaw and why he's so interested in you." Tension crept into my shoulders. "I'm listening." "Shaw's been investigating my organization for 2 years. He's convinced I'm involved in everything from money laundering to contract killings, but he hasn't found evidence that would hold up in court." Vincent's expression was serious. 3 months ago, one of his informants was killed, shot execution style in an alley off Mulberry Street. "Did you?" "No. I don't order executions of police informants because killing them creates more problems than it solves." His tone was flat and matter-of-fact. "But Shaw is convinced I was responsible, and he's been trying to build a case ever since. When you started working for me, you became a person of interest in his investigation." My mouth went dry. "He thinks I know something about the murder? He thinks you might witness something in the future that could be used against me. He's trying to cultivate you as a potential informant, someone who could provide inside information about my operations." Vincent leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I'm telling you this because I need you to understand what you're walking into. If you continue working for me, Shaw will keep approaching you. He'll offer you deals, protection, immunity from prosecution if you cooperate. And if I don't cooperate, Then he'll try to find ways to pressure you. Maybe he investigates your finances, looking for discrepancies. Maybe he brings you in for questioning about things you've witnessed. Maybe he threatens to make your life difficult until you give him what he wants. Vincent's gaze didn't waver. I won't blame you if you decide this is too much. If you want to walk away, I'll make sure you're financially secure and protected from any retaliation. The offer was genuine. I could hear it in his voice. Vincent was giving me an out, a way to escape before the complications of his world became my complications too. What happens if I stay? I asked. Then we deal with Shaw together. I have lawyers who specialize in police harassment. I have resources that can make his investigation more difficult. And I have the truth on my side. I didn't kill his informant, and eventually, he'll have to accept that or move on to other targets. I thought about Detective Shaw's business card, still sitting in my wallet, about his messages offering to talk, offering to help me escape from what he saw as a dangerous situation, about the assumption that I was an innocent person being manipulated by someone more powerful and dangerous. But that wasn't the whole truth. I wasn't innocent. I'd made conscious choices about where to work and who to trust. And Vincent wasn't just manipulating me. He was being honest about the risks and giving me options. I'm staying, I said firmly, but I need you to promise me something. What? That you'll always be honest with me about what I'm getting into. No surprises. No discovering months from now that I've been involved in something illegal without knowing it. I held his gaze. I can handle danger and complexity, but I can't handle being lied to or used without my knowledge. I promise. Vincent's voice carried absolute conviction. You'll always know what you're walking into, even if the truth is uncomfortable or complicated. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation settling between us. Then Vincent stood and walked to a shelf lined with books and framed photographs. I want to show you something. He pulled down a photo album, the kind with a worn leather cover that suggested years of handling. My mother put this together before she died. Said it was important to remember where we came from, even when where we were going looked very different. He opened the album to reveal black and white photographs from decades ago. A young couple on their wedding day, the woman beautiful and fierce-looking even in formal attire. Children of various ages, their faces showing the same dark eyes and strong features that Vincent had. Family gatherings that looked warm and chaotic, everyone talking over each other in what was clearly a house full of love and noise. That's my mother, Vincent said, pointing to the bride. Maria Calabrese. She was 22 when she married my father, already smarter than half his organization. By the time she was 30, she was running operations that brought in millions. She's beautiful. She was terrifying, but Vincent said it with deep affection. She had this way of looking at you that made you confess things you hadn't even thought about doing wrong yet. My father used to say that marrying her was the smartest decision he ever made and the one that guaranteed he'd never win another argument. He turned pages, showing me the progression of a family through time. Children growing into teenagers, then young adults. The mother aging but remaining striking, her presence dominating every photo even when she was in the background. The father looking proud and slightly overwhelmed by the chaos of his life. She died when I was 12, Vincent said quietly. Ovarian cancer. By the time they found it, there was nothing they could do except make her comfortable. His finger traced the edge of a photo showing his mother in a hospital bed, surrounded by children trying to be brave. She spent her last 3 months teaching me everything she knew about running the organization. Said my father was good at the muscle and intimidation, but I needed to understand the strategy and politics. That's a lot of responsibility for a 12-year-old. It was, but she said responsibility was a gift, not a burden. That being trusted with important things meant people believed you could handle them. Vincent closed the album carefully. When she died, my father fell apart, started making reckless decisions, trusting the wrong people, letting emotions override strategy. Within 3 years, he was dead from a heart attack, and I was 15 trying to hold together an empire that was crumbling. I thought about my own father, about being 16 and suddenly alone in the world with nothing but skills he taught me and memories that felt both comforting and crushing. We're more similar than I realized, I said. Both of us lost parents too young and had to grow up faster than we should have. Yes, and both of us found ways to honor their memories through action rather than grief. Vincent returned the album to its shelf. Your father taught you to fight with purpose and precision. My mother taught me that power, without conscience, is just brutality. We're both trying to live up to those lessons in complicated circumstances. The conversation shifted to lighter topics after that. Vincent told me stories about his siblings, 2 brothers and a sister, all of whom had left New York to build lives away from the family business. I told him about the few friends I had from before my father died, most of whom had drifted away when I had become too consumed with training and survival to maintain relationships. It was nearly midnight when I finally stood to leave. Vincent walked me to the door, his hand settling briefly on my shoulder. Thank you for coming tonight, for being willing to see the person behind the performance. Thank you for inviting me, for trusting me with the real version of your life. I was halfway down the stairs when he called out, Maya, tomorrow morning at the gym. I want to work on defensive techniques. Marco says you're excellent at offense, but you need practice protecting yourself when someone gets past your guard. I'll be there. I walked home through streets that had become familiar over the past 3 weeks. The neighborhood felt different now, not threatening, but complex. Every business I passed was connected to Vincent's organization in some way. Every person I saw on the sidewalk might be part of the network of loyalty and fear that kept his power intact. But I was part of that network now, too. Not just an observer or temporary employee, but someone Vincent trusted enough to show his real life. Someone who'd committed to staying despite understanding the risks. My phone buzzed as I climbed the stairs to my apartment. A text from Detective Shaw. Miss Chen, I saw you entering Mr. Calabrese's residence tonight. I'm concerned that your relationship with him is becoming personal in ways that could compromise your judgment. Please reconsider my offer to talk. The deeper you get involved, the harder it becomes to extract yourself safely. I stared at the message for a long moment, then blocked Shaw's number entirely. Whatever he thought he knew about my situation, he was wrong. I wasn't being manipulated or groomed or slowly corrupted. I was making conscious choices with open eyes, and I didn't need his protection from consequences I'd already accepted. The next morning, I was at the gym by 5:30 a.m., running through warm-up drills when Vincent arrived. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept much. Late night? I asked. Business emergency. One of my shipping containers was flagged by customs, and I had to spend 3 hours explaining to federal agents why completely legitimate imports were being treated like contraband. He started wrapping his hands with practiced efficiency. They eventually cleared everything, but it was exhausting dealing with people who assume guilt and make you prove innocence. That sounds frustrating. It's part of the territory. When you have my reputation, every legitimate business transaction gets scrutinized like it's hiding something illegal. Vincent finished wrapping and moved to the heavy bag. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to run a normal business where people took your word at face value. Would you actually want that? A normal business with normal problems? He considered the question while working through combinations. Honestly, I don't know. This is all I've ever known. The complexity, the constant vigilance, the need to stay 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Normal might be boring. Or it might be peaceful. Maybe. Vincent stopped and looked at me. But peace isn't really possible for people like us, is it? We're too aware of how fragile everything is, too conditioned to expect threats around every corner. I thought about that while we moved through defensive drills. Vincent was right. I'd spent 6 years being hyper-aware of danger, reading every room and every person for potential threats. Even before my father died, he'd instilled in me the importance of vigilance and preparation. Peace wasn't something I knew how to access anymore. Maybe it never had been. We sparred for 3 rounds, with Marco watching and offering corrections on my defensive positioning. I was getting better at protecting my ribs and head when Vincent came in with power shots, but I still left openings that a more experienced fighter would exploit. You're thinking too much, Marco said after the 3rd round. Defense should be instinct, not calculation. Your body should know where to move before your brain registers the threat. That's easier said than done. It is. But Maya, you have the skills. You just need to trust them. Marco demonstrated a defensive combination, his movements fluid and automatic. See? I'm not thinking about what to do. I'm just reacting based on thousands of hours of training. Vincent, and I worked through the same combinations Marco had shown us, moving slowly at first, then gradually increasing speed until my body started to remember the patterns. By the end of the session, I could feel the difference, defense becoming less conscious and more reflexive. Better, Marco said with approval. Keep practicing that until you can do it in your sleep. We finished training and headed to the small diner I'd introduced Vincent to 3 weeks ago. The owner, an older woman named Rosa, had adopted us into her circle of regular customers, always having our usual orders ready before we sat down. Egg sandwich for Maya, espresso and cornetto for Vincent, she said, setting down plates without asking. You two look like you've been fighting again. Should I be worried? Just training, Rosa, Vincent assured her. Keeping our skills sharp. Well, make sure you're fighting the right battles. She patted my shoulder as she passed. Your father would want you to be smart about who you trust, Maya. After she left, Vincent raised an eyebrow. Does she know who I am? Rosa knows everything about everyone in this neighborhood. Of course she knows who you are. I took a bite of my sandwich. She's also probably the only person in Little Italy who isn't intimidated by you. I respect that. People who aren't afraid tend to be more honest. We ate in comfortable silence, the kind that had developed between us over weeks of early morning training and late-night conversations. Around us, the diner filled with its usual breakfast crowd, construction workers, office employees, elderly residents who'd been coming here for decades. This was the real neighborhood, the one that existed beneath the surface of crime families and territorial disputes. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that the man sitting in the corner booth controlled much of what happened in their world. My phone rang as we were finishing breakfast. Patricia's name appeared on the screen. Maya, I'm sorry to interrupt your morning, but we have a situation that requires your immediate attention. Her voice was tense, in a way I'd never heard before. There's been an incident at one of Mr. Calabrese's properties. I need you both to come to the office right away. Vincent was already standing, throwing cash on the table to cover our meal. What kind of incident? The kind that involves Detective Shaw and a search warrant, Patricia said. He's claiming he has evidence of illegal activity at the warehouse on Pier 17. Vincent's expression went cold. We'll be there in 10 minutes. We ran. The office building was surrounded by police vehicles when we arrived. Uniformed officers stood guard at the entrance while plainclothes detectives moved through the lobby with boxes of files and equipment. Detective Shaw stood in the center of the chaos, looking satisfied in a way that made my stomach turn. Mr. Calabrese, Shaw said as we approached. Thank you for coming so promptly. I have a warrant to search your offices and seize any documents related to your shipping operations. Vincent took the warrant and read it carefully, his expression giving nothing away. This warrant is very specific about what you're looking for. Someone gave you detailed information about my filing system. We have our sources. Shaw's gaze moved to me. Miss Chun, you might want to distance yourself from this situation. Things are about to get very complicated for anyone associated with Mr. Calabrese's organization. I'm exactly where I want to be, Detective. Shaw's expression hardened. Then you're making a mistake that you'll regret. Vincent handed the warrant to Patricia, who'd appeared at his elbow. Cooperate fully with the search. They won't find anything illegal because there's nothing illegal to find. But document everything they take and who handles it. I want a complete chain of custody recorded. For the next 6 hours, we watched as Shaw's team methodically dismantled Vincent's office. They took computers, files, hard drives, anything that might contain evidence of illegal activity. Vincent remained calm throughout, answering questions with practiced precision, never volunteering information but never appearing defensive. I stayed close, watching the detectives work and noting which files they seemed most interested in. Shipping manifests, financial records, communications with overseas partners. They were building a case around the legitimate business operations, trying to find connections to illegal activities. They're not going to find anything, Vincent murmured to me during a brief moment when Shaw was occupied elsewhere. Everything questionable is kept separate from the legitimate business. But Shaw knows that. This is about pressure, not evidence. Pressure to do what? To make mistakes. To panic and move things that shouldn't be moved, or contact people who shouldn't be contacted. He's hoping I'll reveal something while trying to protect myself. Vincent's smile was cold. But I've been playing this game since I was 15. Shaw is good, but he's not good enough. By evening, the search was complete. Shaw's team loaded boxes into vehicles while he approached Vincent one final time. We'll be in touch after we review everything we've collected. If you have any desire to cooperate with our investigation, now would be the time to speak with your attorneys about a deal. I have nothing to deal about, Detective. You're investigating legal business operations and finding exactly what you'd expect to find: legitimate shipping contracts and proper financial records. Vincent's tone was professional but cold. When you realize you've wasted taxpayer money on a fishing expedition, I'll expect a public apology. We'll see who's apologizing when this is finished. Shaw's gaze moved to me one final time. Ms. Chun, my offer still stands. When you're ready to talk, you know how to reach me. He left, and the building slowly emptied of police presence. Patricia immediately began organizing what remained, making lists of everything that had been taken, and coordinating with Vincent's legal team. Vincent and I stood in his ransacked office, surrounded by empty file cabinets and missing equipment. This is what working for me looks like, Vincent said quietly. Police raids and investigations and constant surveillance. Are you sure you want to continue? I thought about walking away, about returning to a simple life of normal jobs and normal problems, about not having to worry about federal investigations or criminal organizations or the constant complexity of Vincent Calabrese's world. But I also thought about the past 3 weeks, about feeling purposeful and valued for the first time since my father died, about Vincent's honesty and the way he trusted me with the real version of his life, about choosing to fight battles that mattered instead of just surviving from one day to the next. I'm sure, I said. Whatever comes next, we'll handle it together. Vincent's expression softened with something that might have been relief or gratitude or both. Then we should get to work. Shaw thinks he's won a battle by seizing my files. He doesn't understand that he's just given me valuable information about who's informing on my organization. How do you figure that? Because the warrant was very specific about where to look and what to seize. Someone with detailed knowledge of my operations provided that information. Vincent pulled out his phone and started making calls. Now I get to find out who betrayed me and deal with them accordingly. The cold certainty in his voice reminded me that Vincent Calabrese was more than just the man who cooked pasta and showed me family photo albums. He was someone who'd built and maintained power through carefully calibrated violence and strategic ruthlessness. And I just committed to standing beside him while he wielded that power. For better or worse, I was all in now. No more hesitation. No more questioning whether I belonged in this world. I'd made my choice, and whatever consequences followed would be mine to handle. Vincent finished his phone calls and looked at me with grim determination. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Shaw won't give up just because the search didn't pan out. He'll keep digging, keep applying pressure, keep trying to break my organization from the inside. Then we make sure there's nothing for him to break, I said firmly. We find whoever's feeding him information, we shore up any vulnerabilities, and we prove that you're running legitimate business operations. You sound like my mother. She always said the best defense was making your enemy's accusations look ridiculous through sheer competence and transparency. Your mother sounds like she was very smart. She was, and she'd probably like you. Vincent managed a slight smile. Come on, we have work to do, and standing in this destroyed office isn't accomplishing anything. We left the building together, stepping out into the evening air. The neighborhood continued its normal rhythm around us, completely unaware that a battle had just begun. One that would test everything I'd learned about loyalty, trust, and the complicated nature of right and wrong in a world where the lines between them were never as clear as they seemed. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love the story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.